We're really satisfied that Southeast Asia has aspirations to become net zero. I believe 8 out of 10 countries in Southeast Asia have indicated they'd like to be net zero by mid-century or the latest by 2060. So we're supporting ASEAN and also countries in the region to operationalize that objective. So we work with countries to develop long-term outlooks focused mostly on renewables, but all energy transition technologies, and how they can achieve net zero emissions by around mid-century. And progress, most of these countries have only recently announced this aspiration in the last year or two. In fact, most since Glasgow, so the previous COP. In terms of progress, we're at the very beginning of this road. If we look at what we think is what we call our reference case, our planned energy scenario, so this is a future perspective based on current plans and policies, emissions will double across ASEAN. So there is a challenge to not double emissions, rather reduce emissions towards net zero or at net zero within the next 25 to 28 years. So the region has only started on this journey, has a few decades to achieve that, but it's imperative that they start to plan now, deploy the types of technologies, make the regulation and legislative efforts that support this transition now so that they can achieve that longer term goal. I think overall, Southeast Asia has growing energy demand. We see over 2 times growth in energy demand over the next couple of decades with that rising emissions. Potentially, if they don't diversify into renewables, rising import dependency. So it's important that the region considers what we consider energy transition technologies like renewables, efficiency, hydrogen. If they're able to do this, they can reduce that energy demand growth through efficiency, end-use electrification. They can diversify their energy mix towards indigenous sources, solar, wind, bio, hydro, geothermal. So we show that our long-term 1.5 degrees Celsius aligned scenario is actually less cost than a business-as-usual pathway. This is due to savings in fuel, for instance, and costs related to oil, gas, and coal. So the outlook is potentially very positive if they do this route. And it's positive both in the climate sense, but also economically, because it will reduce overall energy system costs. And we have also forthcoming work that shows that it is positive on a macroeconomic level in terms of promoting job and GDP growth. So Southeast Asia is developing rapidly economically. We think GDP will increase up to 3-fold over the next 20 to 30 years. With it growing energy demand, the region should diversify its supply towards indigenous sources and renewables. One characteristic of that shift is higher upfront investment cost, because a lot of the technologies you spend more in the investment phase and you save in the fuel in the operation and maintenance. So higher investment mobilization means that there needs to be more investment. Also, the cost of that investment is very important in determining the viability of that project. So just in the sense of ASEAN would also be international support from the financial community, from multilateral development banks, from other donors to help spur the level of investment that's required, also drive down investment costs. So it would be very helpful for the international community to support ASEAN in developing a cleaner energy system through investment in renewables and support the financing of those renewables. The transition that we envision can only occur if private sector is engaged. We need investments in electric vehicles, in end-use efficiency, in renewables, in hydrogen. So the government needs to set an enabling environment, both with longer-term policy certainty and also, I think, some reform to regulation, obviously legislation, to embed those longer-term targets into the country's planning structures, and then needs to work with the private sector to realize that, in addition to state-owned enterprises, because many have also state-owned enterprises engaged in energy. So there needs to be a collaboration. In the end, the economic opportunities there for private sector to benefit incredibly. So there is a strong incentive for them to work with government, and also for government to help nurture the private sector. And really, we're talking about technologies of the future: electric vehicles, batteries, smart infrastructure, solar PV, hydrogen. So there should also be an interest in developing economically in this direction as well. Generally, we discourage investment in fossil fuel infrastructure because it does result typically in a lock-in of that infrastructure. Long-term contracts, particularly with gas or oil or even coal, are multi-decadal investments. The region has growing energy demand, also has a pretty substantial fossil fuel industry currently. So I don't think there's a need for substantial additional investment in fossil fuel or natural gas supply. There really should be a significant investment into renewables. Growing energy demand, we show, can be met largely through those renewables. It's a climate-safe investment. You don't have to worry about potentially stranded assets in the future. But I think the vast majority of investment needs to be devoted towards renewables, efficiency, and other energy transition technologies.